So look, we've got a problem in democracy right now, and that is that money just has too much influence in Washington. And we have a chance right now in a Democratic primary. We're in a primary, it's Democrats against Democrats, to say, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to build from the grassroots. We're actually going to build a foundation for the Democratic Party that is really about face-to-face, person-to-person, neighbor-to-neighbor, people who are engaged in this campaign, whether they can give $50 or thousands of dollars. What we care about is that we have a whole movement of engaged people who are going to help us get elected, not just to the White House, but help us take Congress, help us take state houses, help us take the governor's mansions, and help us have the momentum we're going to need to make the changes once we're elected. This is about how we build real changes. So I'm excited about it.
So here's my question. You've been in politics for a little while. You've just recently reelected, and
That's
during
right.
that time,
one Senate term,
right? One Senate term, right? So, and during that time, you've done calls to wealthy donors. You've done big ticket fundraisers. You put together a pretty good war chest. I think about $11 million that you had amassed. What does that say about what you were doing before? If this is the right way to do it now, why now and why not before?
So look, I've never actually been in a deeply competitive primary. I get it. Republicans come to the table armed to the teeth. They've got all of their donors, their wealthy donors. They've got their super PACs. They've got their dark money. They got everything going for them. And I'm just going to be blunt. I do not believe in unilateral disarmament. We got to go into these fights, and we got to be willing to win these fights.
So this just applies to the primary. Like, were you to get the nomination, and or anyone else to get the nomination, like, just raise all the money you can, however you can.
Yes, but here.
Yes. The answer to that question is yes. I believe in raising as much money as I can possibly raise once I get out of the primary. When people ask me, why don't, is there any question between, or any conflict between supporters of Warren, or in the support of Warren, or Sanders, or Warren? And my answer is no, there is no conflict on the left between Sanders and Warren. The answer is pretty straightforward. Warren is being somewhat dicey and deceptive here. Chris Hayes was on the right track. Chris Hayes just didn't ask the next question. Nor did Chris Hayes get the answer to the question that he asked the first time around. Warren just talked him in a circle and got out of it. Unilaterally disarmament, and the way that she said it and the way that she rested on it, is a weak position to take. What I mean by that is it's weak on two fronts, and the term itself is a dodge. Using the term in that way, meaning using that kind of phraseology, is a dodge. It's used to kind of dodge from something that's somewhat uncomfortable. So you use this kind of colorful language in order to kind of obfuscate what's actually going on in terms of the conversation. Just two problems in this. One, the logic of it doesn't quite make sense in the way that she's describing it. And two, the terrain to which she is working on, meaning the terrain of the left. On the first point, the terrain on the left is distrustful of this notion of people taking cash. Many of the politicians who are running in this race looked at what took place with Hillary Clinton standing beside Bernie Sanders and realized that the money that they were taking was a negative from the standpoint of public perception. And the question becomes whether the negative in the public perception outweighs the cash itself. Meaning, will the money I get give me bang for my buck if people distrust me because I'm taking that money that I need to use to get the bang for my buck? Warren is taking the position of, I'm not going to take the cash in the primary. Great. I applaud you for it. That's a good thing. The problem here is you are taking it in the general. And the logic that you're saying is, well, I want to build a grassroots movement. The problem here is that if you are saying that you're not going to take it in the primary, but you will take it in the general, are we to believe that the money that you take in the general is in no way going to impugn your character? However, taking it in the primary was some way going to impugn your character. Meaning, if taking it in the general is fine, then taking it in the primary should also be fine. So the question becomes, why not? The answer is kind of back to the first point, the terrain to which they're operating on. She wants to be able to take cash, and she will be able to take that cash once she gets out of the primary. However, When she is standing beside Bernie Sanders, she wants to be able to say, I am not taking that cash, just like Bernie Sanders is not taking that cash. We are a 1-to-1. However, I don't believe in unilateral disarmament, meaning the goal of this particular candidate is to take cash. The person cannot take cash within the context of the primary itself, but they can take it after they get out of the primary. The terrain to which they find themselves is dicey in the sense of taking that cash. So you need a political gimmick of sorts, political expedience to get from point A to point B. She needs to get out of the primary and she needs to be able to take cash. Here's a plan to get us out the primary, which we can take cash like any other campaign. At which point, the people in the primary that were concerned about that cash and distrustful of that cash is now stuck with a candidate that is doing what every other candidate was doing prior. As if doing the exact same thing would get you a different result. It's a gimmick. It's a trick. Logically, it doesn't even make sense. Cenk Uygur, and in this case, Chris Hayes, didn't just ask the very next question. Well, wait a minute. I don't quite understand. Why is it okay for you to take it in the general but not the primary? Why aren't you taking it in the primary? You can build that grassroots movement with all of that cash, seeing as you're saying it's not going to impugn your character in the general election. In fact, you could build that grassroots movement faster if you were taking all that corporate cash. All those corporate people still know your name. They know who you are. You're still friends with them. And you just said you're going to be talking to them after the election anyway. So what's the difference? Why is it okay to take it there, but not here? And are you essentially using this because you want to stand beside Sanders, saying we're a 1-to-1, meaning political expedience? That's the question, Chris Hayes. That is the question, Cenk Uygur. And I put to you that when you ask lefties, why are they distrustful of Warren? It's for stuff like this. What's the point in voting for the echo when the real thing is there? And the real thing is not playing dodginess in the primary in order to get from point A to point B and trick that particular audience into voting for them and being trapped with them after the fact with somebody who they would have been inherently distrustful of in the primary process if they did what they were doing in the general. Let's talk about Warren and Sanders and why people who are in the Sanders camp are severely, incredibly distrustful of one Senator Elizabeth Warren. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, like this content, and you find yourself coming back to this channel often, please like this video, share this video, and of course, goes without saying, subscribe. Also, I think this is going too loud. Also, if you really dig this content, and you definitely find yourself coming back to this channel often, please consider supporting this content through PayPal or Patreon, or for that matter, Super Chats. This content is brought to you by you. I think you'll find on many other channels they're talking about the same thing. YouTube demonetizes these videos almost reflexively, at which point the first thousands or so you don't get paid for. I want to talk about Warren. I've been seeing certain tweets and certain things that people are saying as if Sanders and Warren are similar products. And they're asking these questions like, hey, why don't Sanders supporters trust Warren? Or the other comically gullible one that I saw today was, hey guys, those in the Sanders camp and Warren camp, can we just agree that whoever wins it, everybody just votes for that person? As if, again, these are a 1-to-1. These are not a 1-to-1. I don't necessarily believe to go out against Warren in the same way you would go out against Biden, and I'll explain my reasoning for that. That's more of a political reason more than anything else. But there are severe, extremely credible qualms with Warren and her ignoble career in Congress, especially in the context of being a spongy, I got to be honest, I hate to use this term, somewhat distrustful actor. I will hold that position as provocative as that is. Take a look at this. This is Sanders.
Way to go, Bernie. I am sorry I didn't get that. working on a book and been.
Senator, let me ask you, what do you think the chances are of stopping this pipeline?
Well, I think this is an issue that is gaining more and more support all over the country. It's the issue of climate change, the need to transform our energy system, not build more pipelines. And it is also the issue of standing with the people who have been exploited, whose treaty rights have been abrogated for years. And I think we got a shot at this. And I'm going to do everything I can.
Okay. Any thoughts on the campaign right now? This is my interview, buddy. Any thoughts?
Ed Schultz talking to Sanders about Standing Rock. He's going to a rally for Standing Rock. This video took place in September 14, 2016. The left had picked up this issue and ran with it. The cops, working at the behest of the oil companies, were beating and shooting people who were literally out there praying and trying to protect land that was theirs by treaty. This was atrocious behavior. If this was Hong Kong, this would have been on the news every night. You'd have been seeing water cannons spraying people in this freezing weather. You'd have seen cops shooting these things, hitting people, in one case almost knocking or blowing somebody's arm off. You'd have seen outright violence and theft of indigenous people's land, night after night after night on the airwaves. But this is not Hong Kong. So the mainstream media, for the most part, ignored it. Sanders didn't ignore it. But the key thing is, Sanders has been fighting for civil rights for years, going back to the time he was a child. This is him marching with Martin Luther King. So this is right up his alley on two fronts. On the issue of race and indigenous rights, but also on this issue of class, seeing as these people who are dirt poor are having what little they have sucked from under them. Elizabeth Warren was nowhere to be found on this. In fact, the woman who called herself a Native American for God knows how long, only in December put out a statement. And this statement only came out after Obama came forward. Meaning, Obama took the attitude of, I'm going to let it play out, I'm going to let it play out, I'm going to let it play out. And while people were being beat, shot, hurt, injured, night after night after night, sprayed in freezing weather by cops at the behest of an oil company, Elizabeth Warren also let it play out. Elizabeth Warren didn't come out until after Obama came out, months into this. She didn't come out until after the party essentially said it was okay for her to come out. She checked the weather and she came out. She didn't want to ruffle any feathers. She didn't want to overstep Obama. And what was taking place, what the people were going through, the violence that was being leveled against them, mattered less. It mattered less. Sanders came out for economic, indigenous, and moral reasons, which overwhelmed everything else, in which case he came out and said, this needs to stop. We need to stop these pipelines. And what is taking place in regards to this particular tribe and the abrogation of land is atrocious, and we need to stop it. He came out. Warren. Not. Warren. Not. Again, an issue the left cared about. An issue Sanders was Johnny on the spot. He didn't need anybody to push him. He got up that morning and this bothered him. Warren could nowhere to be found. I hope you're getting the difference that I'm telling you here, and why one side looks at this and says one side is an untrustworthy actor and the other side, not so much. One side is an echo of this other side that has been doing this for the last 40 years. There is no question on the left between Warren and Sanders. And for those who even asked, I have no idea why that question even gets asked. Hey, do you want the echo or you want the real thing? Yeah, let me get the real thing. Let me get the real thing. I mean, there's more. It's not just this. I mean, there's a list of these things. Warren didn't support Sanders. Now, Warren was asked this. Why didn't you support Sanders? Listen to her answer. I want you to hear her answer.
But I'm just going to be blunt with all of you. We can't go back and relitigate 2016. We just can't. We just can't.
We can't go back and relitigate 2016. But you are literally running in an election. And in elections, people look over the things that you've done over the course of your career, your history, and make a determination on whether or not they want to put you in an office. What do you think people are going to judge you by, if not your history? Do you think people can judge you by a future that doesn't exist? No, you don't want to talk about that because, that's not necessarily the best look on you. You have essentially somebody who is supposedly ideologically your second, or at the very least, you're ideologically his second. Supposedly, you two are, in many respects, talked about together as being the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And yet, in an election when he was running in a race where you were clearly closer to him ideologically, you don't support him. You don't support him. Now, the honest answer that Warren does not want to touch is that the reason she didn't support him is because she thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and that just like Tulsi Gabbard, she would be punished for not supporting Clinton in that process. Meaning, Clinton is going to win anyway. She might choose me for VP, and not just that. She may choose me for some position in her cabinet, or at the very least look favorably upon my priorities. But at the very least, she's not going to go after me and punish me when she gets in office. The more honest answer, even further than that, this. In secret letter, Senate Democratic women rally behind Hillary Clinton. All the female Democratic senators signed a secret letter to Hillary Clinton early this year, encouraging her to run for president in 2016. A letter that includes the signatures of Senator Elizabeth Warren and other senators who are mentioned as potential candidates, two high-ranking Democratic senator aides told ABC News. The wild part about this is the reason that Hillary Clinton would get a letter like this is because she wanted to blunt opposition, meaning she wanted to get rid of any opposition from certain members in the Senate that may actually hurt her chances of running for office and get their support early on. Meaning Warren not coming out at all was the strongest forward position that she could take. And afterwards, to just be dishonest about it. Because having signed a secret letter to Hillary Clinton, essentially making, giving allegiance to her as it being her turn, just burns too much and would not necessarily go down well. Ask me why I don't trust Warren. Ask me again why I don't trust Warren. And, reparations. Elizabeth Warren raised her hands and said she was for reparations. Elizabeth Warren doesn't even know what reparations is because no one knows what reparations is. Meaning she's attaching her name to something that doesn't exist with this hopes of tricking people who do want reparations and in their mind have certain beliefs of what reparations is. It doesn't exist. Meaning she's tethering herself with this notion of tricking a part of the population into going with her, thinking that they can deliver something. That something being specific to each and every one of them because each one has their own idea of what reparations is. She put her finger in the air and just went with it. She knew Sanders was being more contextual in his understanding or explanation of it. And this could be an attack point and separation between the two, especially with the black vote. She's distrusted for a reason. That's my point. Meaning, what I'm saying here is not unfair. Everything that I've said here was entirely fair. And even this part, after the election, this, I love this. This is one of my favorite clips.
Previously knew. Do you think, though, that what we're learning from Donna Brazil's book suggests that the campaign, that what the Democratic National Committee did, meant this election was rigged?
Yeah, I think it was.
I think it was. I think it was. I think it was. Elizabeth, you think it was rigged?
Meant this election was rigged?
Yeah, I think it was.
You think it was rigged, Liz?
Yeah, I think it was. Rigged.
What'd you say?
Yeah, I think it was.
You saying it's
This election
rigged?
was rigged. Yeah, I think it was.
Okay, so now she's saying it's rigged. Now, one day later, she comes back and says the exact opposite. One day later. She has a talk with Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur said, why don't you support Hillary Clinton? And she said, I thought it was a great election, Cenk. A woman said to Cenk Uygur with a straight face that I thought it was a great election. But what she's telling him is something where she said she thought it was rigged, and then the very next day said it was. She's a weather vane. She's a shapeable factor. No, she's not to be trusted. There's a reason why the Sanders supporters don't trust her. And we're not wrong for distrusting her. That distrust is credible, especially in the context of an election where the real thing is in the race. She has essentially aped Sanders this entire race. And, take it or leave it, I don't even fully trust her for the Medicare for All stuff. She is a factor of the Democratic Party. The corporate wing loves her. There's an article in the New York Times that came out, I think it was yesterday, saying how Warren has close ties with the establishment Democrats because they, for the most part, love her. She was getting standing ovations at that thing in San Francisco. She hadn't even opened her mouth. Her just standing there was getting a standing ovation. And even though Cory Booker apparently got more standing, clap points, they gave her standing ovation when she left. They like her. And in the articles, they were talking about Kamala Harris going for the money, trying to get the money. Give me the money. At the very end of that was an interesting line saying, Elizabeth Warren isn't here, but these ties are still fresh and they still were talking about her. Elizabeth Warren is not trusted because she has a history, an ignoble history, that when you point to and you point this out, these are things that breeds a certain amount of credible, severe distrust. Especially, again, in the context where the real thing is in the race. Going with the echo makes zero sense to me. Makes zero sense. And it's a weird thing. When Sanders was running, they were attacking him, saying he wasn't talking about foreign policy and that his supporters were whites. Elizabeth Warren's main supporters are whites. And Elizabeth Warren doesn't talk about foreign policy at all. It's amazing how they ignore certain things when it's convenient. I guess in this particular case, those particular issues associated with Warren, they can entirely ignore because they like Warren. Now, ask me again, why the left is distrustful of Warren. And when I say that there is no conflict on the left between Sanders and Warren, that conflict doesn't exist. It does not exist. The left is very clear in its priorities in regards to who it wants. This nonsense about this one-to-one, or there's doubt. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. She is massively distrusted. There are a litany of issues associated with the way Warren does her politics. She is massively distrusted. She is a shapeable, fudgeable factor. And she does certain things that are overtly political in order to get her from point A to point B, this thing of political expedience. But I'm saying it makes her less credible, not more so. And yeah, I don't trust her. I don't trust Warren as far as I can throw her. Look, one last point. I don't have any, my goal isn't to hit Warren. I mean, I know I'm doing this video kind of making this point of creating a division between the two. But I think even if you dislike what I'm saying from the standpoint of being a Warren supporter, nothing I said here is wrong. Nothing I've said here has been mischaracterized. Everything that I said here is absolutely and entirely true. She's distrusted for reasons, for good reasons. She has been weighed and found lacking, particularly from the standpoint of the left. Why go with the echo? From the standpoint of me and the way I look at the politics, though, I have no need to attack Warren. At the end of the day, debates between Sanders and Warren have different people accruing to each side, even though you would think that it would be really similar in regards to the things that they talk about, since Warren, for the most part, apes Sanders' policies. My point is this. Because the bases are different, it is possible that the people who are associating with Warren, if pissed off at you, would not go to you, even though you would be the most natural person for that person to go to. Think of 2016 from the standpoint of Clinton and Sanders supporters. Sanders supporters get a bad taste in their mouth because of the way they believe Clinton supporters are acting, and many of them don't vote Clinton. Go back to 2008. Hillary Clinton and Obama, where you have Pumas, party unity my ass. You had more people that decided to not vote for Obama that were Clinton supporters than Bernie supporters that didn't vote for Clinton. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth sometimes, depending on the way you go about the politics and the way you try to separate division. It depends on the candidate. I will put a knife in Joe Biden any day and crawl across his dead husk in order to push Bernie Sanders over the finish line, because the people who I need to get Sanders are not necessarily in the camp of Biden. Those are more Clintonites, and those people are going to be antagonistic towards Sanders either way. He needs to lose. That is a little bit different than the way of dealing with an Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren also needs to lose, but she needs to lose in somewhat of a different way and enlightening people that she is an echo. And that echo is not necessarily the best thing when you have the actual real thing that has been in this process for 40 years and been pushing for this stuff for 40 years. And again, has been brave for that long. I understand he dropped the ball on the Russia stuff. Nobody is perfect. And, this notion of bravery is not an absolute, especially when you have things that you want to accomplish. But when we're talking about this political process in regards to the policies that you want implemented and espoused in the world, and you're given this option between a Warren and a Sanders, one is essentially a creature of the Democratic Party and is under the thumb of the party. And I would put that to you either in this little I rigged it thing, because the difference between now and the day after that, when she said they didn't, was essentially the party folding around this notion of no rigging, no rigging, no rigging. Or Standing Rock, where again, the party under Obama hadn't necessarily made a choice on that particular issue and was letting it play out. And as long as they were going to let it play out, Elizabeth Warren was going to let it play out. I'm saying that Sanders wasn't a part of this process. He wasn't under their thumb in this particular way. And who do you want? Somebody who's under the thumb of the party, is going to take a ton of cash once she gets out of the race, is using the primary just for political expedience to stand beside Sanders and say, I'm not going to take the money, but I'm going to take that money when I get out of the race. Ha, suckers. In a primary where people didn't want that money and were skeptical of that money, I was able to get you to still support me. Why do you want that? Why do you want that? My job is to elucidate, to get across to people that, look, you have a choice. But I am not going to ding her. I'm not going to hit her overtly hard on this point. I am going to try to make that division however felt. And I'm going to be factually true and honest when I make that felt. Everything I said in this video is absolutely true. And all of it is damning in regards to whether or not you should trust her as opposed to the real thing. Let's see who's here. And I'm going to end this because it's like 2 a.m, but I wanted to make this video while I was feeling like making this video. I'll ask Q later in case you cover it. Notary S. Keep on speaking truth to power. Hashtag Bernie, not Warren. Yes. J. Vale. Hillary evil spirit looms over 2020 like Sauron. Yeah, I think she's a corporate candidate. I think she's a corporate choice. One person is somewhat of a wild card. Sanders is not trusted by the Democratic Party, so you have that. The other person is. And even if they think she may push a little bit on the economic front, meaning some of the domestic policies, at the end of the day, she calls herself a capitalist. She is a creature of the Democratic Party. She is shapeable by that party. Her foreign policy is going to be whatever the current Democratic methodology is. And she's probably going to be somewhat hawkish on the Russia front. I am making the point to you that she is a shapeable, controllable factor. Far more so than Sanders, who has somewhat of a different vision in regards to where he wants to take the party. And a win by Sanders completely undermines what the Democratic establishment wants to be the Democratic Party. Hope you understand what I mean by that. Sanders has put out policy proposals that are transformational on everything from criminal justice to climate to environmental policy. I mean, across the board. He is talking about workers' rights, unions, Medicare for all. Like, all of these things are transformation in regards to what it is for the society. And by extension, if he gets in office, it is what it means to be a Democrat. I hope you understand what I mean. That is a fundamental change a departure, a radical departure from what the previous person was. The fact of the matter is, the public has been screaming for that. And when Obama was in office, they were screaming for it then. In an odd way, you could almost thank Obama for this. Obama ran on hope and change. Because what Obama understood was that the public wanted something radically different than what they had before in the sense of Bush. And he used that for political expedience to get over the finish line with this unifying vision of the first black president getting in office. He ran like a Pepsi commercial of sorts. It was a branding. I'm the first black president. You guys want something radically transformational, and using identity alone to give the impression that something different and distinct had taken place. Technically it did, because you had a black president for the first time. But in real terms, not so much. People wanted it in real terms. At the end of that presidency, people evaluated, did I get the hope and change that he said? What the hell does hope and change even mean? Sanders comes along, and it's legit. They know it's legit because the Democratic Party is terrified of him. And the media looks at him as a little bit like Trump, because these guys are the unwashed masses, in the same way that they look at Trump as the unwashed masses. And from a corporate class that is greedy, dirty rich, that are being paid by billionaires, that they chum and rub elbows with, that they see that particular point of view and not the point of view of the masses. They look at those supporters as being somewhat similar items, despite the fact that one is holding hate rallies and one is holding love fests. It's an issue of class for them, because the issue is class in general. That's not true, however, for Warren. And even that should raise qualms. Why are they so comfortable with Warren? Why is the plutocrat class so comfortable with Warren? Why is the corporate class so comfortable with Warren? Because at the end of the day, she is looked at as the compromised candidate that is shapeable and controllable by a Democratic Party that is still under the thumb of corporate interests. That is true. You might not like it. You might hate me for it. You might be a Warren supporter and you like, how dare you? But what I am saying here is true. And I didn't once hit at the Native American stuff. I don't need to. There's all this other stuff. Because my main hit at Warren is she's an untrustworthy factor. She's a fudgeable factor. She's under the thumb of the Democratic Party. And she will be taking all that cash. Meaning, if you have issue with the cash in a primary, well, you're going to have issue with it afterwards. After which point, however, you will be trapped with the candidate that is taking it, playing you for suckers in the primary, when she could stand by Sanders and say, I'm not going to take it. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on Elon Musk? I don't like billionaires. I don't like billionaires. And Elon Musk, they have people who are ethical billionaires, if such a thing exists. I don't think it exists. He is trying to build this kind of technological, future, however, but one in which where he maintains billions and billions of dollars. He wants to be a trillionaire. I don't have any feelings one way or the other, to be honest, any more than I have of any billionaire. Bigger Express. Tulsi's low key told everyone Warren has sold her soul in her new ad. Really? I need to check that out. I would check that out. I mean, Tulsi's not wrong. Sleep before you have a Biden moment. Maggie Smith. Yeah, Maggie, I'm tired. It's late. I'm an insomniac, Maggie, so you tend to find me at pretty much any time. But I am going to go eat dinner. Yes, I know it's 2 a.m, 3 a.m, but I haven't eaten today. So I'm going to go eat dinner. And you guys have a good night. Nothing I said in this video is unfair. I want to make that very clear. I'm not attacking Warren in any unfair way. Everything I'm saying is true. And if Warren's people really are driven by policy, which according to the polling, many of them are, you need to ask yourself whether she will be able to implement what she is talking about, whether she will be able to galvanize a group and a movement in this way. And not just that, whether you can trust her to do so with the litany of issues associated with the issues of trust and Warren. Hashtag just saying. Thanks all. Like, share, subscribe. You don't need the echo. You have the real thing. And not to mention one last point. Bernie Sanders is the one that's opened up the space meaning the gap that Warren is dealing with. Warren would have never stepped out in this particular space because the space would have never existed if it wasn't for Sanders. Nor will Warren have had the stones or the spine or the backing based on anything else that we've seen from the standpoint of her inability to come forward on anything that is forward the party, if that makes sense. Meaning she's always inhibited or essentially held back by whatever the party's standard is. She's checking the weather. Meaning, if Sanders hadn't opened this space, Warren would have never came forward to push the conversation along in the way that it has gone. So my point is this. Why on earth does it even make sense to go with this notion of an echo? An untrustworthy one at least based on the prior experience. When the real thing is still in the race, still pushing, still hungry, still there, earnest, and whatever you want to think of him, he tells you he's honest. Are you going to raise taxes for healthcare? Yes, I am. I'm going to do that. Everybody else, I'm not answering that. The guy goes out, gives a speech on democratic socialism, and Warren laughs. She laughs. I'll leave it here. I don't want to belabor the point. There is a reason lefties don't trust Warren. There is a reason why there is no conflict on the left in regards between Sanders and Warren. It's not even a question. I was shocked that the question was even asked. No point in the echo. The real thing exists. Thanks all. Like and share.